3 years, I put 88,000 miles a year on my car representing my tribe all over the state and all over the country. It's not easy to be a tribal leader. It's not easy to be the representative for your people. You can't be everywhere all the time. So I have put together a team that I have, General Counsel, one of them, and there's a few others that are here in the room that do the work and whatever, and I come in when needed, and that's why I'm here tonight. So the whole ship is being led by the tribe, and I just wanted to clear up that. And I see the signs too, one law for all. That's all we're asking. One law for all tribes. We just want to be on equal footing with the rest of the tribes. We are a federally recognized tribe, and we're asking nothing more than other tribes have. So if there's any more questions or anything about our use of consultants, you know, sometimes I'm not the smartest person in the world. I never claimed to be, but I am smart enough to bring in the best people to make things happen, and I'm proud of what my tribe has been able to accomplish from where we were 20 years ago when I took office. Our status has been challenged, not just here. We've been challenged in litigation 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people saying we weren't a tribe. The courts upheld we were a tribe. So having said all that, you know, everybody's free to draw their conclusions, but I think in our negotiations with the county, they were sincere, they were in good faith, and I think that given the chance, you will see that Lytton Rancheria tribal members and the tribe will be an asset to your community. Thank you.
Larry, I think you're next. You guys still have some time.
I'll be brief. I think that Congressman Huffman and Bruce covered a lot of it. I just wanted to go over a couple different things. Like the supervisor says, I'll stay as long as there are questions and as long as there are concerns that you want to address on behalf of the tribe. I'm happy to do that. The tribe has made themselves available at the request of the congressman and as well as the supervisor to meet with neighbors, to address the concerns and to go over the agreements. It's as transparent as possible. We've got nothing to hide. We're proud of our accomplishments and we're happy to discuss those with you, and we'll continue to do that. The other thing that I see in looking at the websites is there's confusion about homeland. Homeland's not restricted to just housing. It never has been. If you look at the agreement with the county specifically said in that 1991 stipulation, we'll help you look for housing and for land for economic development. That's exactly what the tribe has done. We've never shied away from that. We want to be treated just like any other tribe, to have the same opportunities to develop economies on our reservation land and to self-govern. Federal law, and let me repeat that, federal law makes it very clear that tribes should be encouraged to develop on-reservation economies and self-sustaining economies. That's what this tribe is about. That's what we're trying to do. So there should be no confusion about that. We've never said it was just about housing. It's about our ability to operate as a government, just like any other government, looking at ways to benefit the welfare of the tribal members. On Carcieri, I think that's been beaten to death here, but I would want to emphasize this. In talking about the Barrasso legislation, that's what we call a Carcieri fix. What that does is make it clear that just like any other tribe, Lytton would be able to go forward and take land into trust, and that process is accelerated under that bill. That would allow land to go into trust within 60 days after that legislation is passed if we have an agreement with the county. Guess what? We have an agreement with the county. So what you would see if that legislation passes is that that land would go into trust within 60 days. If the Bureau doesn't act, that land goes into trust the day after. There's no questions about that. So the idea that somehow Carcieri is an impediment and that there's not going to be any legislation, that's false hope. And I think that your representatives act accordingly. They did a great job. They worked us over on those agreements. You have the best deal possible to protect your interests. Now, if you don't believe that, you can run the risk of letting that Barrasso legislation go through without the controls that the congressman has, and then you're really going to be upset. So from our perspective, we've worked recognizing that we want to be good neighbors. We want to make sure that the legislation works, and we're very grateful for Congressman Huffman in looking at that. That's not always an easy thing to do. We recognize that. The other thing I wanted to touch on, because I've seen that in the website, is the trees. As I understand, and Bruce can certainly correct me as wrong, you have a Sonoma tree ordinance now. And under that ordinance, we could go and cut down 50% of those trees that are located out there now without any obligation to mitigate. What we've done is said, we're not going to do that. We're going to be transparent. We're going to tell you what we're going to do, and we're going to show you that in our NEPA document. We take out 1,500 trees, and we've agreed to replant all of those. And we've agreed then to also pay for the cost of that. And we're letting the county pick where they want to put those in, right? Not the tribe. We're not going to be managing that. Your representatives will take care of that. So the idea that we're doing something to an endangered species or protected trees, patently false. And from our perspective, we're doing the right thing there. And to raise the idea that somehow there's something wrong in development by taking those trees down, once again, we think that's misplaced. Lastly, on the resort and winery, what we've done in securing the language in that agreement is the right to pursue a resort and winery. It's not saying there's going to be one tomorrow. We haven't even come close to looking at what those developments would entail. So the idea that somehow tomorrow you're going to see, if this legislation passed, winery and resort all built up, that's just patently false. That's not what's going on. And if we do decide that we're going to do a winery and resort, we're required to work with Bruce, we're required to work with the county and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it under a NEPA document. And for the mitigation, off reservation, we're going to consult with you. If you don't like what we're doing, take us to arbitration. That baseball arbitration will then require the arbitrator to pick one or the other. And then we go forward. So we feel that that's great protection for you, and it also requires us to mitigate something that without the legislation and without the MOA, we would not be required to do under federal law. Once again, a major concession by this tribe trying to do the right thing in this community. So with that, pardon me? Pardon me? What? But so we're here to answer questions. I'm happy to address the issues, but one thing should be clear. This tribe deserves to be treated like every other tribe, and federal law encourages them to do exactly what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay. Calm down. All right, no clapping. Hearing, please. Okay, Brad Whitworth from Citizens for Windsor, and I think Brad, you're going to come on up here and grab this thing. Do you want the clicker, or you? We need a clicker. You need a clicker. There is only one clicker. You have it.
So thank you very much. It's great to see a huge audience here. My name is Brad Whitworth. I'm from the Citizens for Windsor group. It's an honor to be able to represent this group and to share, as the famous broadcaster Paul Harvey said, the rest of the story. If I can find I may need to be on that side of the room. Boom. If you're at this stage confused or a little bit angered or maybe frustrated with everything that you've heard or things that you haven't heard, you're not alone in this room. I'm really glad that you've come to join us, because I hope that we're able to perhaps answer some of the questions you have, provide a little bit of information that probably hasn't been covered yet. You've heard from the town council, you've heard from the county board, you've heard from the U.S. congressman, and you've heard from the tribe itself. The one crowd that you haven't heard from are the citizens of Windsor, the people in this crowd that are here tonight. And I want to let you know that the citizens for Windsor are a subset. Please don't, you can raise your hands, but no applause, as Jeff has said, please. The Citizens for Windsor are a representative group. It's people who have lived in the community for 43 years, like Pat. It's people who've lived in the community for 2 years, like Christine back there. It's people who live in the affected areas. It's people who don't live in the affected areas. But we've all come together to be able to see if we can find out a little bit more information than what we've been given by our elected officials to be able to end some of that confusion. If the only thing you have read about this development is what you received in the mail if you're a Windsor voter, it's a little bit short of telling you the complete truth, because it talks about a homeland. But you have to look at this map that's generated by the county to get the complete picture of things. Here in the green circle, that's a little bit tough to see, but up at the top, that's the 147 acres that everybody's been talking about. That's the homeland territory that the Lytton would love to be able to build their homes on. But what they didn't include in the brochure was anything about these parcels that are being circled here in red toward the bottom of the map. These are the places where they're talking about being able to do some of that economic diversification that's so important for the tribe. So what we're really talking about in that diversification that really wasn't included in the brochures was that 200-room luxury resort hotel, the 200,000 case per year winery that would probably be one of the biggest in the county and competing with some of the people in this room. It's the restaurants, it's the spa, the event center, the weddings, all that sort of fun stuff that are going on. So this development is really not just about homes for tribe members. It's really about a huge development on the commercial side of things that's going to take agricultural land, rural land from Sonoma County and turn it into massive commercial development that's running tax-free. It's also sadly about some of the backroom deals and the negotiations that none of you in the room had any inkling were going on during the last several years. So what's wrong as far as the Citizens for Windsor feel about H.R. 2538 MOA and a lot of the stuff that's been going on? Well, you heard about 1,500 oak trees, and I'm sure they'll be replaced, but it's really hard to replace 200-year oaks, and especially in an environmentally sensitive area. If they're clear-cut to be able to build homes in one place, you can't put them anywhere else and just hope that that takes care of the environmental problem. It doesn't. You don't take care of 1 million extra car trips per year on that Windsor River Road, down Star Road, across River Road, or up East Side Road, where you're competing with bicycles. Oh, we'll widen the road, we'll do some things, but it's really hard to take care of another additional 1 million car trips a year. There's 100 million gallons of water that are going to be needed to be able to support that homes, the winery, the resort, all the economic development we're talking about, and that doesn't even count the viticulture that they're doing quite well in the county. And the question I have is, where do the 100 million gallons of water going to come from? It's interesting that the town of Windsor in this last year during the drought has been actually able to save about 100 million gallons of water. And I would sort of hate to see us give it all up to be able to support a development like this, especially in the midst of a huge drought where we don't know whether or not our water is going to last, let alone to be able to share it even more broadly. The world has been said, don't worry, we heard from some of the people who represent the development side of things, we'll just drill deeper wells than your wells. As far as I understand from geology class, I don't think the law of gravity does not apply in this country. The water is going to go downhill, it's going to go to the deeper wells, and some of our shallower wells that serve the city and the town of Windsor and the unincorporated areas are not going to have the water. Our wells are going to run dry a lot quicker than those that belong to the development. There are a lot of concerns. I'm not going to have time to cover them all in 10 minutes. I don't have enough time to cover everything that everybody in the Citizens for Windsor was telling me to do. Just like, don't forget to mention this. You need to cover that. You need to cover that. We don't have enough time to be able to cover all that. But what I would like to do is show you how we got here. It really starts in 2001, when there was a request that came before the city, the town, for 50 homes on 50 acres in that area west of Windsor. And what happened at the time was the county said no and the city said no. These are not in keeping with the general plan. This is not the way this land is supposed to be used. It's rural residential. You can't do that. So about 8 years later, the tribe came back and said, oh, we'd like to do not only 50 homes on 50 acres, but add another 97 homes on 74 acres that we bought right next to that. So we're now up to, and you've heard the numbers before, it's that 147 homes on 125 acres, 150, yeah, do the math, you can do it. But the county once again said no, passed a resolution that said we don't think that that's in keeping with the general plan. The city said no. We passed a resolution that said that's not in keeping with the plan and the urban growth boundaries that we put in place and trying to preserve the green belt around this town that we have come to love. And the other person that weighed in on this was the California Attorney General, who said, you know what? There are 10 acres that belong to the Lytton that are their tribal homeland in San Pablo, California, that are registered as that whole federal fee to trust kind of thing. And that is the Lytton's reservation. And their tribal home is now Contra Costa County, not Sonoma County. That's sort of an interesting stipulation. And then what happened was, for the next few years, nothing. Silence. We didn't hear anything from the tribe, we didn't hear anything from the county, we didn't hear anything from the town. Quiet until, all of a sudden, on March 10th, 2015, we got this notice that we have made a great deal for all of you. Actually, if you looked on the Santa Rosa Press Democrat website the night before at about 9:53, you would have found the fact on page 257 of a 300-page document that they were actually going to vote on this the next morning. Or if you looked in the paper the morning of the vote, you would have found that they were going to be holding the vote. And there weren't a lot of people who made it from the population, people who might be interested in having a say. So what happened was, the deal was not about that 50 acres, it wasn't about the larger acreage. They said, we've done a green light kind of thing for an even bigger thing. It's 10 times as big as what you last heard about. But don't worry, it's going to cover 361 homes. That's more homes than there are tribe members. Interesting fact. There's going to be a hotel, there's going to be a winery, there's going to be a no casino at least for 22 years. Now, it's not really 22 years because the clock is running, so it's 21, and we know how quickly things can move. That's going to be a change that'll happen before some of the kids who are in the back are grown up and going to college and coming home and hoping to live here. We mentioned that there is this 10 acres down in San Pablo, a casino. Some of you probably visited, some of you probably spent your money there. The interesting thing about the casino is it's quite a money machine. It's making about $200 million a year for the tribe, and all that money is tax-free. They don't pay federal tax, they don't pay state tax, and there's lots of places that money can go. And I say that there's two general directions that you need to understand about where this money goes. One is it's using to buy property. The second direction it goes is to be able to buy support. So where's the property? $212 million invested. That's like a year's worth of their income is invested in property over a number of years to buy 65 acres, 65 properties representing 2,000 acres around Sonoma County. And it's here in Windsor, but it's also in Santa Rosa, it's Healdsburg, it's Geyserville, it's out by the coast, Cazadero, Annapolis. The other thing that's interesting is we've seen it go to buy support. $5,100 to the congressman, $100,000 to Brown, $400,000 to fire district, $1 million to the school district. And Huffman says that there's been wide support for this bill, 2538. But the interesting thing is that the people who wrote those letters of support were Governor Brown, the fire district, the school district. Slight coincidence, but not there. Our numbers say that there isn't wide support. Citizens for Windsor actually did a poll a couple of months ago to find out how many of you were in favor of this development moving forward, and 70% said, no, we're not in favor of it. But I just want to see if we could do a quick survey here. We have to do it with hands, we can't do it with clapping, just a quick survey to see if those numbers are still valid. Now, this isn't scientific, and probably this isn't representative of the total population the way we did it before, but how many of you are against, a show of hands, turning agricultural land into a large-scale, no clapping, tax-free commercial development? How many of you are in favor or against depleting local water supplies by 100 million gallons of water per year? How many of you are against clear-cutting of blue oak trees? How many of you are against adding 1 million more car trips through the town of Windsor and the surrounding rural environment? That's, but no, yeah, quiet, please. This was, yeah. I've got the floor here, please, at least for a minute. But thank you. It doesn't look like it's 70%. It looks a little bit more than 70% to me. So thank you for voting. We hope we have another opportunity to have a say in what's all happening. So the real question I have for my elected official friends up here is, do you represent the 1%? Because there are 270 tribe members who are asking for something. There's 27,000 Windsor citizens out there. So it really is the 1% and 99%. And the real question is, who are the elected officials listening to? Now, some have said that the fee to trust homeland is illegal. We've heard about Carcieri, some cases closed. They were not a tribe in 1934, they didn't get formed until 1937, therefore they don't really exist. I'm not here to be able to argue it, and we're not going to be able to solve that sort of stuff tonight because it really is something that's going to go on. But right now the Supreme Court says, no, they're not a tribe, they don't get land. Now there's some say that this fee to trust is inevitable, and you've heard the discussion about its inevitability. I guess the question I would ask is it really inevitable or not? We know that H.R. 2538 can be stopped. There's some that put this, when Representative Huffman introduced this bill, it's fast-track legislation. And I would say that we, in this room, many of us can see a train wreck coming. Some have said that this train has left the station and it's gone. I think that there's a way that we can stop it, and the train engineer happens to be sitting in the room with us. And all he really needs to do at this point is take his hand off of the throttle and move it over to the brake side of things, and at least wait to see what's happening with Barrasso. I am. I know we're playing by NBA minutes. I sort of watched that a little bit, so we'll be there.
But I think it's time.
It is. So we can do this stopping with your help. It doesn't take that much. Tell the Windsor Town Council up here that you really want them to pass a bill, a resolution opposing 2538. You can tell Jared Huffman, besides your hand vote, that you feel he should withdraw the motion for now and see what we can do with it. You can come back and talk to the citizens for Windsor after the meeting's over. Write letters to people like Diane Feinstein, Barbara Boxer. Let them know what's going on, that you don't appreciate what's going on, and just come and talk to us. And thank you for listening to the rest of the story.
Okay, folks. If we could keep the hooting and applause to a minimum, that would be very respectful. All right, so we have the Lynda Hopkins, neighbors of Lytton Development, and Lynda, do you want this? Is that? No, that's this one should. This one advances it. This one sends it backwards. Okay.
Now we're like on slide 5 or something.
I know.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
Great.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very different than most of the people at this table. I'm a farmer. My husband and I grow vegetables on East Side Road. Can everyone hear me? Can I get is that close enough to my face? Okay, great. My daughters are the 4th generation on their family farm to go and pick Gravenstein apples off of the old apple trees down by the Russian River. The property has been in the family since the 1950s. And I stand before you today representing the neighbors of the Lytton Development, which is really just a concerned group of citizens that grew out of this whole process. 3 months ago, when this whole thing kind of got going, none of the guys sitting at the table would call me back. And it's thanks to all of you and the work that you've put in to make our voices heard that I actually got a seat at the table. And that's why I'm standing here in front of you today. So thank you to every single person in this room. But especially thank you to all the people who are emailing me back and forth literally at 1 a.m. as we research tribal law and county zoning. It's a complicated thing to understand, and we worked hard to understand it. When I first got involved in this grassroots movement, we were against a lot of things. We were against the destruction of open space. We were against the overuse of water in a statewide severe drought. We were against the unfettered development of the Russian River Valley. We opposed the 15 closed-door meetings with the Town of Windsor, and we opposed the 5 closed-door meetings with the entire Board of Supervisors at the County of Sonoma. We opposed Huffman's bill, and we opposed the county's MOA. And what we also opposed was this, which is a line that was drawn on a map. And there are people living inside of that line that didn't know that line was being drawn. And it's kind of scary when that comes out in the press and you think, hey, why didn't I ever get a phone call or a notice in the mail? So that really got us started. But you know what? It's great to start out being against things. Sooner or later, you have to start standing for things. So I'm here tonight to stand in front of you representing a group of people who stand for things. We stand for things like governmental transparency. We stand for things like community involvement. And we also stand for things like community-based solutions. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about perspective. Over the past 3 months, I worked really hard to look at this from the perspective of everybody sitting at this table. And I'll be completely honest with you. The hardest perspective for me to see is the perspective of the tribe. I'm a white woman. I can't possibly understand what it means to be Pomo. I can't carry the weight of the historical tragedies that the Pomo people have endured. But I absolutely owe it to my neighbors to learn about and understand that perspective. At the same time, there's another perspective in this room that maybe many of you are thinking right now. Maybe you're thinking, hey, it wasn't my ancestors who killed their ancestors, and why am I being held responsible for that today? And that's a valid perspective as well. And there's a perspective of people who are just afraid because they don't know what's going to happen. They fear for the future of their town, and they fear for the future of their countryside. It's a big unknown. I'm going to say something a little crazy now, and that's that I've actually developed another perspective, and that's the perspective of the politicians that are sitting at the table. The politicians who fear a broken and extremely complicated fee-to-trust process that largely leaves them out of the loop when it comes to local zoning and ordinances. This is the geographic reality that we're dealing with. It's a beautiful landscape, right? We are so lucky to live in Sonoma County, and it's land that we all share together. You can see the city of Healdsburg to the north with about 11,000 people, Forestville to the west, 3,300 people. The Town of Windsor has about 27,000, and the Lytton Band of Pomo Indians has about 270 members. This map shows you a little bit more about what this land means. This is the approximate size of the land that was identified in the county's Memorandum of Understanding, of Agreement actually, 1,300 acres. And you can see that it's actually a pretty important chunk of property. It serves as a buffer zone between the sort of urban development area that you can see kind of up the 101 and in the Town of Windsor, and the agricultural Russian River Valley. You can see the Russian River winding through there. It also serves as a bit of a community separator between the town of Forestville, the city of Healdsburg, and the Town of Windsor. It's land that we all have in common. Whether or not we live in the country, I think that we all appreciate the ability to bike there and hike there and even just take a drive on a Sunday afternoon. This is the political reality. Every single person in this room has different needs and desires. The Lyttons are seeking a homeland, and for them, that means both economic diversification as well as housing. They're also seeking water and sewer hookups from the Town of Windsor. I understand that they recently withdrew the water request due to concerns, but we actually encourage them to bring that back to the table because we think it's the more environmentally sustainable route, is to go through municipal water. The community is seeking a lessened impact, and we also want to have certainty about our neighborhood and our lives moving forward, because it's really hard to not know what the future might hold for our town. I'm going to throw the politicians at the table a bone here, and I'm going to say that they actually want to represent the constituents' interests, and they want to take responsibility for the community and the environment that they have been elected to take care of. Which brings us to a sustainable solution, which is absolutely political speak for compromise. No one likes compromise. With compromise, everybody loses. No one gets exactly what they want, but I'm here today because I would like to present a potential sustainable solution or compromise that maybe we could all live with. This is a bit of a moonshot. I'm going to be the first one to admit that, but I also want to mention that the neighbors of Lytton Development have met with every single person at this table, and we've been working for the last 3 months to really understand this issue. So this isn't just an out-of-the-blue proposal. Let's jump into it. 124 acres for tribal residential housing and community centers, as was discussed in the 2009 proposal through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. All other Lytton-held land to follow the Sonoma County General Plan in perpetuity. We also ask for no casino in perpetuity. The in perpetuity thing, by the way, is really huge for me because I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. And right about when they're coming home from college is when the county's MOA and all of its wonderful environmental safeguards would expire. And I say wonderful in quotes because I'm not a huge fan. I think they could have done more for us, but they have made an effort to, put some safeguards in. But if they only last for 22 years, 22 years is not that long. But this is something, we're asking something of the tribe, and so I'm going to ask something of the county too. I'm going to say that $6 million that you got from the tribe, let's take it down to $2 million. I'd also like to ask something of the Town of Windsor. I'd like you to host public meetings to discuss the community benefit. I want you to actually contribute money towards the project because it's really, really easy to spend other people's money. There's also something really cool happening in this room tonight, and that's that we have a very diverse group of people sitting at the same table. And we all come from different perspectives, and I would like to ask that dialogue to continue. I'd like to see meetings between the tribe, between local government officials, and 2 citizen representatives, one from within the town limits and one in unincorporated county. I think that should the proposal go forward, that we should meet, let's see, I don't know if this thing is dead, there we go. Quarterly meetings during the development phase, and then annually going forward. So that's sort of the summary of the potential plan that we've come up with. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that anyone in the room is going to love it, but I do think that at the end of the day, we have to at least take a shot at living together and getting along. There's also something that I forgot to say, because I don't usually stand in front of a room full of people, and that's there's another perspective here, and that perspective that Brad addressed is about money. And to be honest, after getting to know the politicians at this table, I don't think that they were influenced by money, but I do think that sometimes government is encouraged to take larger mitigation dollars for a short-term sort of thing. So basically, they're taking the money instead of reducing the impact on the community. And I'm going to stand here and ask the county to reduce the impact on the community and to also reduce the mitigation dollars. So I have the first, I think, how much longer do I have? Anyone know?
2 minutes.
Okay, great.
On my clock. I'm always giving you a little extra.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and start the Q&A session, but I don't expect you guys to answer because I have some kind of big questions to ask you. I'm going to start with Supervisor Gore. As it is currently written, we can't support the county's MOA because it authorizes open-ended commercial development on open space land. The impacts are too big for the community. The safeguards and no casino clause you like to talk about expire in 22 years, which isn't acceptable for all the people sitting in this room. If the tribe were to agree to follow the general plan on all county lands beyond the 124 acres for housing in perpetuity, would you consider reducing the mitigation costs for the tribe from $6 million to $2 million? You don't have to answer, you can think about that. I'll just keep throwing them out there. I have a big question for Congressman Huffman. As it is currently written, we really feel that we can't support H.R. 2538, which was introduced without the support of the people who would be most affected by it. The bill's no casino clause is also weaker than what we've been discussing. We mentioned that when we were meeting... Hello? Does it keep cutting out? Yeah? The bill's no casino clause actually only applies to lands currently being proposed by your legislation. And if lands were taken into a trust in the future, it wouldn't apply there. And lands that are contiguous to trust lands can go through the BIA process. And so you mentioned an amendment in that meeting, and I'm going to ask you to follow up on that. But I'm going to ask you to follow up with it with an even stronger amendment. I would like you to submit an amendment that would recognize a new legal agreement between local governments and the tribe, an agreement that actually took community input into account. Chairwoman Mejia, I recognize and respect your people's right to tribal sovereignty. Would you consider consenting to follow the Sonoma County General Plan on the rest of your property in the interest of community goodwill? I know that you'd like to diversify your tribe's economic base beyond a reliance on casino income, and I would like to point out that there are opportunities for economic diversification within the Sonoma County Plan. While a 200-room hotel would not be permitted, you could apply for use permits for a winery and bed and breakfast businesses. I would imagine that the Planning Commission would take your considerable goodwill into account when considering the winery proposal. To the Town Council, I ask, would you be willing to take your negotiations with the tribe into public view? And have you asked the community what public benefit they want? If we do want a pool, would you be willing to contribute some town money for it? Because, as I said before, it's really easy to spend other people's money, and we should invest in this project too. Finally, I'm going to tell you why I support this agreement. I support it because I believe Brad when he says that fee to trust might not be inevitable. But after 3 months of researching the issue, I can tell you that fee to trust is still very possible. I support this proposal because it protects open space and keeps development close to the town's borders. I support it because it gives the Lytton tribe a homeland while preserving one law for all on the majority of the acreage. I support it because it gives government officials the chance to make things right with the people they represent. And I support it because this is the way that community and government should operate, working together and discussing to create solutions. But at the end of the day, I'm just a farmer standing on stage with a bunch of people who have a lot more authority and power than I do. But the great secret in this room is that there is actually something that has more power than the people sitting at this table. And that's all of you speaking in one voice. So I want to ask